Britain says it will increase its support to Iraqi forces fighting Daesh terrorists, says British Defence Minister Michael Fallon while on a visit to Baghdad.
Turkish warplanes continue to hit Kurdish rebel targets in southeastern Turkey, hours after 2 soldiers were killed by a mine laid by militants in a neighboring province.
And 13,000 people are given evacuation orders in California as the state's biggest and fiercest wildfire of the year grows. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news.
Good evening.
We begin here at home, where His Majesty King Abdullah of Saudi Deputy Crown Prince and Second Deputy Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, who concluded a brief visit to the kingdom. Following an official welcoming ceremony at Al Husseiniya Palace, His Majesty held a meeting with Prince Mohammed in the presence of a number of senior officials from both sides. Talks focused on bilateral cooperation and ongoing developments in the region.
Britain will boost its support to Iraqi forces fighting Daesh terrorist group and will continue its airstrikes in Iraq. British Defence Minister Michael Fallon made the announcement in Baghdad following a meeting with the Iraqi Defence Minister Khalid al-Ubaidi. Fallon also said Britain will extend its air campaign in Iraq by a year and would use aging Tornado fighter jets to conduct strikes until at least early 2017.
Emphasised today that there will be no let-up in the support that the United Kingdom is offering. We are improving and increasing the training in counter-improvised explosive devices, the training of the Iraqi forces in handling these devices, and we will be continuing the airstrikes that we are undertaking in support of ground forces. I'm also reviewing with Dr. Ubaidi what further support we may be able to offer in terms of building the capacity.
In Syria, Al-Nusra Front, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, has abducted 5 rebels who have been trained by the United States. Al-Qaeda abducted the rebels after raiding areas along the Turkish border in the past 24 hours, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The group now holds 13 men from Division 30, a Syrian rebel unit that includes some fighters recently trained by the U.S. military. The U.S. military launched a program in May to train up to 5,400 fighters a year as part of U.S. President Barack Obama's strategy of getting local partners to combat Daesh in Syria. If confirmed, the capture of the fighters would be seen as a blow to the U.S. military program of deploying local forces to counter Daesh terrorists.
Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim is on a visit to Tehran for talks with the Iranian Russian officials expected to focus on efforts to end the 4-year-old war in his country. Muallim was to meet this evening with Mikhail Bogdanov, President Vladimir Putin's special envoy to the Middle East, before holding talks with the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif tomorrow. In remarks about the visit, Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian earlier suggested the chances of a diplomatic resolution of the war are growing. There is a shift in the strategy of regional players since the start of the war. He said now they prefer to focus on diplomacy. Abdullahian was quoted by Faris news agency.
Turkish warplanes hit Kurdish rebel targets in southeastern Turkey hours after 2 soldiers were killed by a mine laid by militants in a neighboring province. Turkish F-16 jets carried out a 35-minute assault on Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK targets in Hakkari province near the border with Iraq. Shortly before the airstrike, 2 soldiers were killed when the military vehicle they were traveling in was hit by a blast from a remote-controlled homemade mine planted by the PKK in neighboring Sirnak province. 2 other security personnel were injured in the incident. The death brings the number of Turkish security forces killed by the PKK since July 20 to at least 18, the worst bloodshed since a ceasefire agreed in 2013.
In the ongoing war on Daesh, the US-led coalition targeted the terrorists with 19 more airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. In Iraq, 16 airstrikes hit 9 units of terrorist top fighters, as well as various fighting positions, checkpoints and other targets. 3 airstrikes in Syria hit 3 fighting units and 4 fighting positions.
Fighters loyal to Yemen's deposed president seized about 10 southern villages from Houthi forces, maintaining momentum in their offensive. Clashes took place across the southern province of Lash, most of which is now back in the hands of the Saudi-backed forces. Boosted by the Saudi-led airstrikes, forces drove the Houthis from the port city of Aden last month and pushed to the north to recapture the Al-Anad air base after a several-day siege. Next, their target is to clear the provinces of Abyan and Lash, according to commander of the anti-Houthi forces. Meanwhile, the UN envoy to Yemen, Ismail Wuld Sheikh Ahmed, renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire in the conflict based on a plan that includes Houthi withdrawals from main cities to pave the way for the exiled government's return.
Back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania called on the Queen Rania Teacher Academy, where she joined teachers at a training workshop on environmental education, amid enhancing their knowledge on preserving the environment and finding solutions to local environmental challenges. The training session is one in a series of courses offered to private and public school teachers during the summer break to develop their teaching skills with focus on environmental issues. Her Majesty met with the Academy's director, Haif Banyan, as well as teachers taking part in the training and discussed with them the impact of the course on furthering teaching skills. Since 2009, the Academy has offered 65 training courses in pedagogy and content instruction, with 22 more sessions lined up for the upcoming months.
And the migrant crisis continues in Europe. Around 300 migrants were taken to safety in the Sicilian port of Messina today after being rescued at sea near Libya. The migrants from sub-Saharan Africa were rescued yesterday after traveling on 2 dinghies sailing towards Europe. Italy has had about 90,000 sea migrant arrivals so far this year, after receiving 170,000 last year. Many of the newcomers look to move swiftly to wealthier countries in northern Europe, including to England from Calais, France. The Mediterranean has become the world's most deadly barrier for migrants and refugees, with 3,500 thought to have died at sea last year.
Zurich Airport Customs seized a record 262 kilograms of ivory, worth almost $413,000. The inspections were carried out on 2 suitcases that were checked in the Tanzanian city of Dar es Salaam and which were traveling to Beijing. Policy requires check-ins to be made on a luggage coming from the city, allowing customs officials to make the discovery. Ivory trade falls under the Washington Convention, and its importation to Switzerland is prohibited. Here's more.
262 kilograms of ivory, more than 500 pounds. That's what Swiss authorities seized at the Zurich airport, crammed into suitcases, wrapped in aluminum foil, hidden in jars of hand cream. It was the most ivory ever seized by customs officials in Zurich. Customs Chief Heinz Widmer says astonished officials checked their records. Officials estimate the black market value of the ivory at more than 375,000 euros, or $410,000 US. The 3 suspects are now in custody. The announcement of the seizure comes amid new scrutiny on poachers following the killing of Cecil, Zimbabwe's celebrated lion. He was shot by an American trophy hunter, prompting an international outcry against big game hunting. 3 U.S. airlines have now banned the transport of some exotic animals killed for sport, all part of efforts in the West to crack down on poachers and smugglers.
Evacuation orders have been given to 13,000 people in California as firefighters struggle to contain some 20 wildfires. The biggest blaze, the so-called Rocky Fire, north of San Francisco, has already consumed more than 233 square kilometers of land. At least 24 homes were destroyed as the blaze was whipped up by winds that fueled the flames. Other parts of the western U.S. are also seeing wildfires. More than 300 people were moved from the path of fire in Washington state, while another burned over 15,000 acres in Oregon.
Still in the United States, but in the East Coast, where a sinkhole swallowed up a New York City intersection, collapsing 2 lanes of a roadway during morning rush hour. No injuries were reported when the ground suddenly opened in Brooklyn, causing the street to cave in and exposing gas lines and water mains. The 3-meter-deep hole was large enough to cause authorities to shut down traffic in the area, which led to subway delays.
A Palestinian soccer team from the Gaza Strip will host West Bank opposition for the first time in 15 years after Israel gave the visitors permission to cross its territory for the clash between the territory's respective cup holders. Al-Ahli from Hebron in the occupied West Bank arrived in Gaza City for Thursday's match against Gaza's Shuja'iyya. The return leg in Hebron is scheduled for August 9, and the overall winners of the Palestine Cup will book a place at the next Asian Football Confederation Cup.
The final wall dividing the Transolympica tunnel in Rio de Janeiro came crumbling down today, giving workers just 1 year to complete the project before the start of the 2016 Olympic Games. The tunnel is part of the 26-kilometer highway that will connect Barra de Tijuca, where the Olympic Village will be held, to the Diodoro Olympic Park, one of the 4 venue sites. The corridor will also have an exclusive lane for the city's new bus rapid transit line, and is expected to serve 70,000 passengers and motorists per day once completed. Transolympica Expressway project is currently 65% complete, and with the 1 year to go, the city looks like a giant building site. The 2060 Olympic Games will be open on August the 5th.
And South Africa's Cameron van der Berg set a world record for the men's 50 meters breaststroke in the qualifying heats at the World Swimming Championship in Kazan, Russia. The defending champion's time of 26.62 seconds broke his previous mark of 26.67 seconds set at the World Championship in 2009.
And finally, looking at the weather forecast, hot conditions continue in most regions for the rest of tonight, with a chance of light rain in the eastern regions. Tomorrow, hot conditions prevail as well, with a continued chance for thunder and rain. Winds will be southwesterly moderate to brisk.
And the Gulf of Aqaba should definitely expect hotter and drier conditions, with northerly moderate to brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Britain says it will increase its support to Iraqi forces fighting Daesh terrorists, says British Defence Minister Michael Fallon while on a visit to Baghdad.
Turkish warplanes continue to hit Kurdish rebel targets in southeastern Turkey, hours after 2 soldiers were killed by a mine laid by militants in a neighboring province.
And 13,000 people are given evacuation orders in California as the state's biggest and fiercest wildfire of the year grows.
And with this, we come to the end of this edition of news. I'm Luay Balkar.
And I'm Ali Tuqan. Thank you for watching. Have a good night and stay cool.
Good night.